Hi, I'm Laura Rolfe, host of Powered by Franchising and CEO of Mint Franchise Consultants. I like to bring in a variety of guests on the show to talk about their journey into business ownership, how they support entrepreneurs, and give back to the community. So today's guest, Crystal Petry, is the founder of Crystal Petry Consulting and has a great background in grant writing, podcast, media producer. She's a national speaker. She's a consultant. Welcome to the show, Crystal.
Thank you so much for having me. That was a great intro.
Well, delighted to chat with you today. Talk a little bit about your journey. You've been a business owner now for 2 decades. Tell our listeners a little bit about your background and how you found your way to what you're doing today.
Absolutely. So, when I was working in the traditional job market, if you will, Laura, I initially was in media, which is what I got my undergrad in. So, my undergrad, I got in communications with an emphasis on broadcast media, meaning I wanted to work in TV. And upon graduation, really before I graduated, I secured a job at an NBC affiliate. And I was the producer for the morning show and a fill in reporter. So, all the things that I wanted to do, I was able to do. Now, initially, I wanted to go and be a sports reporter and work for ESPN because I just love sports, but that did not happen. But I did end up working in media, and I worked in broadcast media for over 7 years, and I loved it. I love the chaos of it, of working in news media, because you never know what your day or your morning is going to be. But the schedule was also hectic, and the schedule was also chaos because news never takes a break, as we clearly know in our 24/7 news cycle that we have now. It never takes a break. So, at a point in time in my life, I just wanted some normalcy. I wanted normal hours, normal eating habits, normal sleeping habits. From there, I went to a nonprofit organization. Now, before I got to the nonprofit organization, I don't know if I had ever heard of grants. Maybe I had in passing, I'm not sure. But when I got to this nonprofit organization, the entire organization was run off grants. And I mean, my salary was paid through grants. The rent on the building was paid through grant. The light, water, utilities was paid through grants. Even your paid time off and your paid sick time, everything was paid through grants. So I start working here. I love it. I move up in the ranks at the nonprofit, and I love it. And as I'm moving up, my director at the time called me into her office, and I'm not knowing what the meeting is about, but she says, Crystal, and this is after several years of me working there. She says, Crystal, I want you to write this grant. And I was kind of like, what are you talking about? I've never written a grant before. And she said, she was super encouraging. Her name is Pat. Pat was super encouraging. She was like, you can do this, Crystal. No worries. She was like, oh, and by the way, your salary depends on it. So
Better be
I'm
good.
like freaking out, Laura. Like,
Hmm.
okay, first of all, you called me in here just on a random Wednesday and tell me I have to write a grant that I've never written before. And oh, as I'm walking out the door, your salary depends on it situation. So, of course, I am super nervous. I'm super scared. But I need my salary and I want my salary. So I start working on the grant. And of course, Pat was very supportive. She helped me. She answered all of my questions. And I ended up securing that grant. And that was the very first grant that I ever wrote and I ever secured. And it was for my salary. And I was scared the entire process. I was so scared, Laura, but got the grant, and that gave me a little more courage to go after the next grant and the next grant. And so that's really what I continue to do. And eventually, I bet on myself. I took the leap and decided that I wanted to start my own company. And the reason that I felt ready was because the place I was in my life at that time, I felt like this is the right time for me to take this risk, to take this leap. So if I'm successful at it, amazing. But if I'm not successful at it, it will not hamper my life in such a way. So I was like, this is the perfect time. And so I started with grant writing first, which is something that I'm still doing. So I'm still writing grants for nonprofit organizations. I write grants for profit organizations as well as entrepreneurs. And I also started a podcast. And the podcast touches on my first love of TV and broadcast and media. And it allows for me to meet amazing people like yourself, Laura, to talk and to learn about different aspects because we all live in our bubbles. And a lot of times we don't get outside of those bubbles. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the podcast allows for me to get outside of my bubble and meet new and amazing people and learn new and amazing information while also allowing me to write grants and help people to scale their businesses and also help people to service their community with those grant funds.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for sharing so much about your background. When I'm talking to aspiring entrepreneurs, people who want to get into business for themselves, I often talk about their background and their journey and what has taken them from each step. So for you, it's your background and your degree in journalism
Mhm.
and then working in media for a period of 7 years that helped you, I'm sure, develop your quick writing skills, your
Yes.
ability to be brief, because those news shows you have time is your only asset that you really have.
Yes.
You have to be very brief. So I'm sure that's helped you with your grant writing. The nonprofit and giving back to your community. We share that in common. I've spent 25 years working in nonprofit. I've written hundreds of grants over my career. And yeah, when your paycheck is dependent on that, or your services that you're providing to the community are dependent upon funding, there's kind of a light under you that I'm going to do
Yes.
the very best that I can and utilize the resources. A good supervisor, a good person giving you input and direction, reviewing those things is important. And then those foundations were the catalyst for change to step out on your own. So aspiring entrepreneurs that I work with, they have some sort of catalyst. What is their reason? What is their why for change? Your why was balanced hours. Like, I don't want to work early in the morning and be at the news's beck and call, whatever the news is today. That catalyst for change just kind of leads us to the next level. So you've written hundreds and hundreds of grants, and really impacted lots of different organizations. What would you say to our listeners today about the importance of that community give back and supporting nonprofit organizations?
For me, nonprofit organizations are really the backbone of our society. It's the backbone of our community and it's the backbone of our neighborhood. because if someone is hungry, a nonprofit agency is there to feed them. If someone is cold, a nonprofit agency is there to give them a coat. If your child does not have school supplies, most likely a nonprofit agency is there to help them with their backpacks and their pens and paper and folders to get them ready to go to school and be successful. So, a nonprofit agency is really the backbone of our society, and it's what keeps us lifted up. It's what humanizes us because, as humans, if we're being honest, we can absolutely get in our own way. We can, have these conversations and stories within our head that are not necessarily true. But when you walk into a nonprofit agency and you see the line is out the door because people are hungry, it humanizes you and makes you realize that there are people less fortunate than you. There are people that really, really need your help. And when you see that, it should make you want to serve. It should make you want to help in whatever way you can, whether that's volunteering at that homeless shelter, or in my case, writing grants for them so that they can keep that homeless shelter open, so that they can keep the lights on, so that they can keep the water on, so that they can continue to buy food to feed our neighborhood and to feed our community.
Thank you for that. And thank you for the impact that you have that ripples through communities across the United States. One of my core values is changing lives. And so when I worked in nonprofit, I could see the impact firsthand by the work that we did, the work that our volunteers implemented to change lives. And then when I transitioned and started my own company, I still wanted to channel that core value of changing lives, and I change lives through business ownership now. And many of the franchises that I represent also change lives through empowering their franchisees to support a nonprofit that either everybody in the franchise system is part of that together. That one painter is an example. Earlier this year, their franchisees painted 100 homes in a week across the U.S.
Oh, I love that.
So people who wouldn't necessarily be able to afford to paint their house, and so they gave back, donated the paint, donated the supplies. Others are doing things like supporting Habitat for Humanity, doing a build project over the weekend. Others are collecting food for their local food bank, or school supply drives for back to school. So many of the things that you touched on. So giving back of volunteering time as well as supplies and effort is important. But money also helps pay the salary of those employees, helps fund where there's a gap between the volunteering and the service, because we don't necessarily see all of the things that are needed for each of the nonprofits. So it's very, very powerful to be in that role in the community. So you also help small businesses with grant writing, so for-profit companies. I have people come to me often and say, Laura, I would love to start a business, but I don't think I have enough money. What is your impact on small businesses and helping them fund certain things in their business with grants?
One of the things that a lot of people don't realize is that there are grants for-profit organizations. And a lot of people don't realize that a lot of people associate grants with nonprofit organizations. And that is exceptionally true. But there are also grants for-profit organizations as well, and small business organizations, and even businesses that just got started. Because again, I feel like people want to help, businesses want to help, private foundations want to help. So the funding is out there, Laura. The grants are out there. You just have to be able to find them and align yourself with these funders. So when you're talking about small businesses, sometimes small businesses cannot afford a grant writer. So one of the things that I have started was a grant writing workshop, and it's virtual, where it's more affordable than a grant writer, and uh, it enables you to research your grants. It enables you to write your grants and successfully secure funding for your small business. Small businesses sometimes feel left out, maybe they feel forgotten, but there's so much grant funding for small businesses out there. You just have to find it. And what a lot of people that I've spoken to and I've seen them do, Laura, is they will get on Google and they will type in grants for small business.
Yes.
And Google will give you millions and millions of options
Yes.
if you type in those 3 or 4 words. And it can really feel intimidating because you have all, like, who do I pick?
Right.
Who do I give my time and my energy to with all of these options? So, the workshop that I'm hosting helps you to figure out how to find them, what grants that you want to give your energy and your time to, how to apply for them, the language that you use. You spoke about that earlier. The language that you need to use when writing for and applying for a grant. So grants can literally take a small business, Laura, from a small business to a medium-sized business, and from a medium-sized business to a large business. And that is in capacity, that is in employees, that is in a brick and mortar building, if that's something that you want, that is in paid time out for your employees. That's bonuses for yourself and for your employees. So a grant funding can really help elevate your business wherever you are, whether that's a small business, a medium-sized business, and even large businesses.
So, with your grant writing workshop that's virtual, so people can take it if anywhere they live, what are some of the key things that you focus on in besides helping to identify? Like Google will give me 1,000 different opportunities. Like which one do I pick, or which 3 do I pick to help set me up? What else will they learn if they sign up for your grant writing workshop, Crystal?
That is a great question. So, one of the main things that they will learn is storytelling. Because when you are writing and applying for grants, you have to know how to tell your story. And you have to know how to tell your story in a way that the person that's reading will be affected by that. Most times, not all the times, but most times when you are applying for a grant, you are writing to someone that's probably not in your city, probably not in your state, and probably never heard of you or your organization. You have to tell your story in such a way that they are filled with emotion and they want to help you. They want to service you. And telling your story includes your numbers. Yes, I fed uh, 1,000 people, or I've clothed 1,000 people, whatever that looks like. But also, what's the emotional side of that? Because we know that if children go to school hungry, they are less likely to succeed. But if they go to school and they've had a balanced breakfast and they have a lunch that they can eat when lunchtime comes, they are more likely to succeed. And you name me one person, whether they have children or don't have children, that does not want a child to succeed. So you have to be able to tell your story in an emotional, engaging way where the person that is reading that will feel the urge and the need to help you and want to give you money to keep feeding the homeless, to keep feeding children and making sure they are successful. So that's one of the main things on top of the other two that you mentioned, Laura, but also one of the very different things that my grant workshop provides is the people that register can actually bring a grant proposal that they are working on. And by the time the workshop is done, their grant proposal will be about 80 to 85% complete, because I will allow you to ask specific questions about, I'm looking at this grant and they want to know, what is my budget narrative? And I will be able to walk you through writing that budget narrative. I'm looking at this grant and they want a resume. What do I need to put on my resume? And I will be able to walk you through exactly what you need to put on your resume that will catch the funder's attention. So, those are a few of the things that are really standing out with the workshop. The storytelling component is huge, but also you can bring an actual grant proposal to the workshop and receive hands-on support and help with that grant.
So, a storyteller, that is so important because you've got to humanize whatever
Yes.
it is that you're seeking funding for. And I think that it's all have stories, particularly if we've worked in nonprofit, we've volunteered for nonprofit. I volunteer for Arizona Animal Welfare League, and I'm on the National Advocacy Committee for the National MS Society. I fundraise for a couple of other charities throughout the year, Child Crisis Center. I have my own stories that I can tell, and humanizing them is really important. And there's only so much funds available for a particular foundation to give those monies to charities. And so, some of the tips I used to give to my grant writers were, ask for a little bit more and than you need, justify it, but ask for a little bit more because you might not get all of the funding you need. But storytelling is such an important piece, and naming Johnny going hungry or Sally needing that coat in the wintertime and how that's impacted them. So for a business owner, it's a little bit different. Like, how do you talk about the narrative and recommend telling a story if I'm a small business owner looking to expand in impact my business and my employees?
Well, one of the first things I do once me and the client, if you will, we, both agreed like this is what we want to do. They want to hire my company as the grant writer, is we actually have a conversation. I have a conversation with that person or the people that do the work in their business. And what I have found, and I'm sure you found the same thing, Laura, when you were working in grants, is that people are so busy doing the work that they don't realize the impact that they are having, and they don't realize the story that they are creating and the story that they are building within the work that they are doing. So, as I'm speaking to my clients and as I'm listening to them talk about, we've had this operation, we'll just stay with kind of feeding the less fortunate, for example.
Mm-hmm.
We've been feeding, the less fortunate for 2 years. And we also feed them for Thanksgiving, and we also feed them for Christmas, and we give them gifts and we give them toys, and we have showers available so they can take a shower, and we have a PO box that they can use to get mail, because a lot of people that are homeless, they want to get help, but if you don't have a driver's license or a social security card or some form of ID, then the odds of you getting help decrease drastically. Well, if you don't have an address to put down for a driver's license or a social security card or some form of ID, then you don't get the ID. So it could turn into a vicious cycle.
That makes
But
sense.
here, this nonprofit is they have a PO box or they have an address where you can use and put down to get your forms of ID, and therefore lead you to get other services, other social services to help you get off the street, to help you get a job, to help you get food and clothing. So, a lot of times, nonprofits and small businesses are so busy doing the work that they don't realize the impact that they're making, and they don't realize the story that they can tell. And that's where I come in.
Excellent. Well, and Crystal, you've also said that true leadership is built on inclusivity. How do you integrate that belief into how you run your business and serve your clients?
With what I'm in, I'll go back to this, the grant writing. When I'm talking about inclusivity, I'm making sure that people that need help and that needs the safe space to receive that help and ask for that help, that I'm able to provide that as much as possible. So a lot of people that I was speaking to, they know they need grants. They understand the power of grants, but they are not in a position right now to hire a grant writer. So from that conversation, I wanted to make sure, because I understand the power of grants, and I want other people to understand how powerful grants are and how they can change your business life and your personal life. And that's how the workshop came about. The workshop will teach you how to research grants, will teach you how to find and apply for grants for less money than you would have to spend for a grant writer. So you're still getting all of my experience, you're still getting all of the education, you're still getting the lessons that I've learned, you're still getting the triumphs and even the trials that I've endured through grant writing. You're still getting that with the workshop. So, being inclusive for me means making the information available in as many different ways as possible for the people who want and desire to learn about grants.
So, if any of our listeners are interested in taking your grant writing workshop, how would they contact you?
They can go to my website, Laura, and the easiest way is what I always tell people is just Google Crystal Petry Consulting, and it's the first thing that pops up. Go to my website, and on my website, you can register for the virtual grant workshop,
How often
and
do
you
you
can
have
pay
those?
there as well. Mhm.
How often do you have these workshops?
I have them quarterly. So the next one I have coming up is in November. Then after that one, it will be February of 2026 and then May of 2026. So they are quarterly. And again, as you stated earlier, they are virtual. So you can register and log in from wherever you are, whether you are at work, if they allow that. You could do that from home. You could do that from Starbucks, wherever you are. You can log in and learn about writing grants and the power of grants. And that
Excellent.
was another reason that I wanted to make it virtual, Laura, is because of that inclusive piece.
Mm-hmm.
Because everyone cannot go to in person wherever, we would hold the in person. Everyone wouldn't be able to fly or drive to make it to the in person. Everyone cannot afford to take off 2 or 3 days for the conference. So I wanted to make sure that, if I have an in person, great. But also, I want a virtual so that more people are able to log on and get that information.
Yeah, it's good to have your services accessible wherever people are who need you. So I'm
Yes.
glad that it's virtual. You've had a lot of accomplishments over the years, Crystal, and it may be hard to and difficult to pinpoint just one. But can you name one or two of your proudest accomplishments?
Oh my goodness, that's such a great question, Laura. I'm usually quick with my answers. Give me a moment. Let me think. Um, I think number one, starting my business. That is a huge, huge accomplishment for me because it's always been something that I wanted to do just way, way in the back of my head, but I don't know if I actually believed that I would eventually do it. I would just think about it and say, if I had my own business, I'd do this, or one day I'm gonna start my own business, just the story that I was telling myself. But I don't actually believe that I thought I was going to do it or that I would actually be in a place where I could do it. So starting my business was a huge accomplishment for me. um, I would say my podcast also is a huge accomplishment for me. I'm in season 3 right now as we are doing this podcast. It'll be season 4 in February of 2026. And I never thought that I would be doing a podcast. I never thought that I would make it to season 3. I never thought that I would have interviewed. I think I'm almost at about 200. I don't count the guests, but I think I might be close to maybe 200 people that I've interviewed, both national and international.
Wow.
Like none of this was ever on my bingo card, Laura.
Well,
When
your
it
smile
comes
is exude like just your smile is brilliant, and you can tell how enthusiastic you are about your business and very passionate about your podcast.
to,
I fell into podcasting myself about a year and a half ago. I had no intention of podcasting, and anyway, a girlfriend had encouraged me. I was only going to do this for a couple of months, and
yeah.
almost 2 years later, I'm loving it.
Congratulations. I mean, because you know this, Laura, podcasting is not easy. It's a lot of behind the scenes work that goes on. It's a lot of planning that goes on. It's a lot of scheduling that goes on. I mean, throw myself under the bus here. You've had to reschedule my podcast twice just because life has come up or my schedule suddenly changed. So there's a lot that goes into podcasting, but it's something that I absolutely love and I really consider it a win and I consider it a highlight. Yes.
Well, excellent. Well, I love your podcast as well.
Thank you.
So, business ownership isn't for the faint of heart. You got to pivot, you got to roll up your sleeves, you got to have a little grit. What have you learned in business ownership over the years, Crystal?
Oh my goodness. The most important thing that I have learned in business ownership is probably the most difficult thing or was the most difficult thing for me, and that's patience. You really have to have patience when you are building a business, when you are starting a business, especially if you're starting it from scratch, like what I did. You have to really have patience with yourself because for me, and I can only speak for me, but I'm sure your listeners out there will probably be in agreement. I thought that when I started my business, I would have all of these clients and all of these customers, and I would have a wait list, and the money would be coming in. I would be making this huge impact in people's lives, and like all of these great things would immediately happen as soon as I got my LLC and my EIN.
Yes.
But that was not the case at all,
Right.
Laura. Not the
Takes a
case
little
at
work,
all.
a little time.
It takes time. and it takes patience.
Yes.
And more so, I will say to your listeners to give yourself grace and to give yourself patience, because you start telling yourself these stories, you start having negative self-talk. At least for me, I was telling myself these stories and I was having negative self-talk because all the things that I assumed was going to happen literally overnight was not happening overnight. It was happening over years and over time to build a community and grow a community and build trust and build rapport. Those things happen over time, and it's not an overnight or over the weekend or, in a month situation that's going to happen. So I would say the most important thing that I have learned in building and growing my business, whether that's the grant writing or the podcasting, is just having patience with myself and having patience with the process.
Great insights, Crystal. Yes, we don't snap our fingers magically and the money comes and the clients are lined up, and it does take time to get the word out,
Yes.
to establish that credibility, that
Mhm.
know, like, and trust factor, the referral networks of others
Yes.
that are going to lean in and say, Crystal is amazing. You need to work with her. You should take her grant writing workshop, or ask her about her podcast. It takes time. It just,
Exactly.
and I say that to my clients all the time, that they want something that's going to be cash flow positive by the end of the year. And I'm like, well, there's not a lot that are going to, like, that you can just snap your fingers and next week they're starting to, the money is flowing in. So it takes some time
Exactly.
to market, etc. So Crystal, what do you hope to leave as your legacy in your business?
Oh my goodness, Laura, I don't even know if I'm old enough to be thinking about legacy.
You're already making an
But
impact, Crystal. So your
I
legacy's already started, even if
uh,
retirement is way down the road.
thank thank you. Thank you for that, Laura. Thank you. I think the legacy that I would like to leave is bet on yourself. Whatever that looks like in professional or personal, to bet on yourself, be willing to risk for yourself, because we bet, and I'm not talking about gambling, but we bet on so many things in life.
Hmm.
We risk so many things in life outside of ourselves, but we never bet on ourselves. We never take the risk for ourselves. So if there's something that I would like to leave for my legacy, is that I bet on myself, that I took a risk on myself, whether it succeeds or it fails. I still took the risk and I still bet on myself. And I think more people need to do that. More people need to bet on themselves. More people need to take the risk for themselves instead of for everyone else and other people and other entities around them.
I love that. Yes, you gotta step out and take a chance. I had a female boss many moons ago who said to me, as I was pretty new in my career, she said, Laura, women aren't always given the advantage. If you feel like you know at least 40% about whatever it is you're stepping into, a new role, a new volunteer, something or other, a new job, a new business, you can learn the other 60%. You're smart and
Yes.
resourceful. So betting on myself and listening to Jane in my head, like, if I know 40% of something, I can figure out the rest, and that will give me a
Absolutely.
leg up and an advantage. And so I impart that on anybody that I mentor. I've imparted that. I was just sharing that same philosophy with my daughter on Friday, and she manages people, and she says, "Mom, you've been telling me that for years." And yes, I also impart that knowledge of, if you know 40, 50%, then you can fake it until you make it the rest of the way.
Yes. Because they're going to teach you anyway.
Yes.
They're going to teach you when you get there anyway. Absolutely. Yes.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners today, Crystal?
Just understanding the power of grants and how grants can absolutely affect your world in a positive way. I am an educated and experienced grant writer. So if you're looking for a grant writer, here I am. Also with the grant writing workshop, that is available to you as well. And right now, the price of that workshop is at a discounted price. So I'm taking $250 off the top. So anyone that is interested in signing up and registering, I encourage you to do that now because space is limited. I don't allow too many people into that grant workshop because it is a hands-on workshop. And I want to make sure that the people that are there are getting quality time and quality investment and receive a return on their investment through that workshop. So again, please Google Crystal Petry Consulting. My website is the first thing that pops up. And from there, you can look at all of the grant writing services that I offer. You can also register and get more information for the grant writing workshop. And also, you can subscribe to my podcast, the Crystal Petry podcast. Laura has been on there and she
Yes.
was amazing. So you can absolutely listen to her podcast about the benefits and the power of franchising. I learned so much during our podcast. So all the things, yes.
Well, Crystal, it's been absolutely delightful having you on the Powered by Franchising podcast today, sharing your insights on business ownership, storytelling, the power of grant writing for both nonprofits as well as small and medium-sized businesses. Again, if our listeners are interested in learning more about Crystal's workshop, visit or Google Crystal Petry Consulting, and you can find out more. You can also connect with me at mintfranchiseconsultants.com. I'm happy to chat with you further about Crystal and what she has to offer, as well as other funding opportunities for your business, whether it's franchise or an independent business. I feel like, one of the things that I love to do is be a connector of resources for aspiring entrepreneurs. And please, as Crystal says, bet on yourself. It's the best bet that you'll ever make. Have a great week. Thanks for listening to Powered by Franchising.